How you doing?
Oh, pretty well, thank you. And
Eh,
thanks for the invitation.
of course, we've been chatting for a few months now, trying to get this organized, but our busy schedules were getting in the way of us talking. But I'm glad we could finally find a moment today to do this. For people who don't know who you are and what you do, can you give us a brief overview of your current situation?
Wow, I usually hate those things as a self introduction because I rather have some other people to introduce me. But simply, I'm a sports physician. I work in Prague, in Czech Republic, in the center of sports medicine, and I take care of elite athletes for all kind of elite sports. And I'm a member of medical committee of the Czech Olympic Committee.
All
So
right.
this is it. I mean, all the rest is said.
Easy enough from here on out. So, can you talk to us about, to begin with, the role and responsibilities of a medical doctor such as yourself in elite sports? What are kind of the things that maybe people from the outside don't realize what's important in your view and with all your experience?
Yeah, simply what it is, because if you say sports medicine, I mean, different countries and different areas around the world have a different perception. So what I'm going to say is usually a typical example of the Central European stuff, where we can compare like Germany, German-speaking countries around, small
Mhm.
countries in Europe, because many people understand the sports medicine as the injury prevention and injury treatment, which is only a part of that. Usually, the elite sport or sports physician for elite sport or team physician is something that maybe some of my colleagues can also comment on that. But simply, you are like almost a GP for the elite sport, which means that you have to have an understanding of a physiology. You have to understanding of rehab. You have to understanding of internal medicine, surgery, a part of nutrition. So simply because you are there as a backup that athlete and their coaches and the team managers are coming to you and asking, okay, something goes wrong, and in many cases we don't know why and we don't know what's going on. So and they are turning to you to help them to understand what has been done wrongly or what has been done inappropriately to during the training or whatever, and then it's your turn to help them to solve it.
What are the biggest, let's say, problems that coaches and athletes come to you with usually, or that you've seen over the years?
It's actually changing slightly. It's actually changing over the last year or last 2 years. It was definitely COVID, which was in some way was a new one, because it in past we knew about it. We knew about something which was called post infectious syndrome. Now it's called post COVID syndrome. We knew that typical example was, for example, EB virosis or infectious mononucleosis. And there's a long history of athletes that has been terminated from the competitive sport because of the long post-infectious symptoms of EB viruses. Well, for this moment, this is now famous post-COVID. So this is, I would say, not number one, but definitely a big part of it. Another part is, I don't want to say typical overtraining stuff. Sometimes it's overreaching. So I would rather call it unexplained underperformance syndrome. And then another part is our respiratory diseases. Another part is infection, or let's say failure of immune system, recurrent infectious, all the kind of sport, and then of course musculoskeletal stuff. Gastrointestinal, cardiovascular, so all those things that you can imagine that athletes are like suffering. So it's a really wide area of the stuff that you have to work with.
I want to try and pick a few of those apart with you here. If we talk about underperformance, overreaching, whatever term we want to use for this, what is going to be your line of investigation as, like you said, a quote unquote GP? What are you going to think about first, ask about first, and how are you going
Yeah.
to help the athlete and the coach
So,
navigate through this?
so the current approach for overreaching or underperformance syndrome. So let's call it underperformance because we really don't know what is the status and where is the root cause. We call it there is a Latin term definition per exclusionem. Okay, per exclusionem means by exclusion. So simply, you have to cut one after another known diagnose, and then what you are left is then unexplained underperformance. And what is the most important learning we have over the last 2 years since the COVID came on board is that we really rarely see, or we don't see almost at all, a typical overtraining syndrome based on the typical lack of recovery and heavy trainings, simply typical overtraining as described in the literature. What we have seen in many cases is the underperformance based on the huge amount of non-training based stress, psychological, nutritional jumps on the training, from, okay, so not training a lot, then push back that he's not training a lot. So big jump. So usually those are like those typical mistakes, but definitely not something that you can really like pinpoint. Okay, here, this is what you have done so much. You are too much on the threshold training. You have almost no recovery. It's almost not existing anymore for this moment. But what we have seen are all those small mild stuff, and plus what is booming besides of the COVID, because we can talk about it later, is the energy deficiency. I don't want to call it directly as a eating disorder, because this is not that frequent, but energy deficiency is a wave that is coming over, and especially in the women's sport.
Okay, would you call that under eating as opposed to an eating disorder? Under fueling relative to
it's an energy deficiency. We can call it in different ways. What it's not only about, you can call it whatever you want, but you know what I'm talking, under eating if you want.
Okay, what do you think is bringing this to the forefront? Why is it becoming? You said it was becoming more prominent in the last years.
There are 2 to 3 things. Number one, what I see is a strong push for the outcome or kilogram per watt, kilogram per tempo. So simply, it's an efficiency. It's not a metabolic efficiency, but the weight efficiency. So using a weight as a part of the performance improvement. For those who are not at that level that would be qualified to do it, which means that those things are already starting as a stuff in teenager age, in junior age, U23 category, while it has not been there in the past. So this is the first one. The second thing are the changes based on the COVID and the post-COVID era in the changes of training changes and increased volume, while in many cases the increased volume and increased intensity is not followed by the increase of the food intake. So we have athletes, for example, who changed the team. One of the really elite athletes, I will never reveal the names, but I'm talking about Olympians who started to train with another country, while in the Czech Republic the typical was the polarized training. In the other country, it was parameter training, more even forcing to the threshold training. The athlete improved heavily in all the tests and was about to be fantastic in the Olympic Games. and then completely failed in November last year, and we found out there was a huge energy deficiency because as she shifted to the from polarized to the threshold or pyramidal, depends on how you define it. The energy output was much higher, and she really unintentionally got to the huge energy deficiency. So
Because
we solved it, and it was a success at the end. But I'm not saying that. So, and he is far away from having a eating disorder. He is not
right.
eating disorder at all. It's just those things that are happening right now.
I guess that was the in that case it was a decoupling of the training load and the amount of food stuff that was needed
Yes,
to fuel the work, and then what the intake actually
right.
was. And like you and the previous point that you made is, I guess, where in sports where weight matters, probably cycling, especially when we're talking about climbers, and where the like you said, the relative power watts per kilo is an important metric. Trying to drive the weight down can be a way to improve your performance, but it comes at a cost, and especially as you mentioned, for women and maybe for even young girls, as you were saying, in their teens, where their intake is going to have a big impact on their menstrual cycle potentially, and that is something that you could probably talk about more than me as a qualified practitioner.
Yeah, because this is known for many years, because I don't want to offend anyone into the east to us, but we know about many cases that happened in the past. I cannot comment for this moment about the current status, but the former Soviet Union has been known by manipulating the weight to avoid actually menstrual cycle. Intentionally avoid menstrual cycle to improve the performance. Or there are even cases where the anti-baby pills has been used to manipulate with the menstrual cycle to fit not to the healthy girl but to the training itself. So the more about the racing. So those are the extreme stuff, but it happened in past. So I really can't comment right now. But from the past, we have a lot of learnings about that. And everything what I'm talking about has been also part of the weight strategy to manipulate the performance. And this
Can you talk about
is the way.
Can you talk about the negative impact that I guess a restricted caloric intake for a female athlete that is, putting out a big amount of volume in training and probably intensity as well? What is going to be the short-term effects and the long-term effects of that energy deficiency?
In short term, everyone. It's a trap, because in short term, if you lose the weight, everyone improve. I mean, that's not a brainer. What is happening in the midterm, that what not only we see, but those are the typical examples. First of all, is a dysfunction of the thyroid gland, and it's so-called isolated deficiency of T3, which is the hormones coming from the thyroid. Another stuff is low glycogen level. So which means that in many cases the heart rate, the maximum heart rate goes down, and definitely the glycolytic system is down. But once again, for the long performance, for 10K or athletic, let's say 30 minutes and longer, this works pretty well, because they improve just by decreasing of the glycolytic power. So once again, they feel it's appropriate. And then as it follows, one of the issues is that it is more prevalent than in the regular girls, are the gastrointestinal disorders, and insufficiency to receive and digest gels and saccharides during long races like a marathon or even cycling. So at the end of the day, in many cases, they got to the hypoglycemic and hypoglycemic status in the worst scenario, but definitely low level of glycogen, and they bonk. So those are like the typical sports stuff. People don't realize one thing. What the most likely root cause of the decreased maximum heart rate is based on the fact that that heart muscle uses lactate as one of the primary source for the energy. And as you have low glycolytic capacity, you have very low lactate offering to the heart muscle, and then simply you can't the muscle is running on the safe, let's say, call it safety mode or whatever you want to call it. So simply the maximum heart rate goes down and maximum power goes down. So those are the midterm what we see. And then as it continues, of course, loss of menstruation, loss of changes in mood, in attitude. There is one thing what you can hear and what you can read is about osteoporosis. But unfortunately, we have several cases that has been tested in DEXA, and unfortunately, what is actually showing that DEXA is not sufficient for this moment for the energy deficiency as a diagnostic tool. Because the continuous training works as a preservation stuff for the bone density. So bone density is falsely okay. While if you would have non-athletic person in energy deficiency, definitely bone density would be decreased. But this is not working. This is not working as a screening or as a good example, as a good examination for the energy deficiency. And then as it goes, VO2 max down, and then going down and down, and then you have the rest.
Going back to what you mentioned about the glycolytic system and having low levels of glycogen available through that energy deficiency syndrome, underfeeding, would a very low lactate value on, say, a step test be an indicator or maybe a signaling that we have to look into this further? And that might mean underfeeding for that given athlete. Say, I test athletes quite often that I don't know personally. They come to see me. I haven't seen them. I obviously have a questionnaire for them. But if I see, I don't know what you would qualify as a very low lactate value after a maximal effort step test, but would that be an indicator of a potential energy deficiency?
So before I answer that question, we need to discuss one thing, which is a technical stuff, because many people don't realize, think that okay, lactate is lactate. So if we measure 2 millimoles, it's 2 millimoles. If we measure 4, 6, whatever it is, it's just a hard number. Many people don't realize that this is an electrochemical process based on the device. And what we have seen over the last year or last 2 years, unfortunately, significant changes in the design of the devices and also on the strips, which means that I don't want to. Okay, I will pinpoint the company because I was vocal about that as well. For example, the new Lactate Scout 4. Measuring significantly lower numbers than the old Lactate Scout Plus. And I've been in discussing with the manufacturer, heavily about that, and they deny that nothing has changed. And finally, actually, there was a white paper, actually showing that due to internal changes, the measurement between 0.5 and 2 millimoles are different in the Lactate Scout 4 versus the Lactate Scout, the previous version. And if you don't know that, you would think, okay, your athlete is doing perfectly well. Or you can say yes, something got wrong, and maybe he got to the glycolytic depletion status, or the patient or the athlete didn't have a breakfast in the morning, or has been even starving for 2 days, which is in fact not real. So one thing before we go to the lactate testing, and by the way, it's general, because we have the same issue right now with spiroergometry, but we can talk about it later because they changed the software, the sensors recently. So go back. So before we say, based on the lactate measures, how reliable are the measures right now? So whenever someone will be measuring lactate, and there is another example, because they changed not only the device, but they also changed the strips. So I can just suggest for the listeners to make sure that the numbers are reliable. They have a reliable device, and which they can trust. And the best thing is to have someone who is for example, someone from the lab, or if you have an athlete, so someone who is close to you and you know him, so just from time to time to test it. So, but then go back to your question, which was related. The low level of lactate means nothing if you cannot put it into the context what the athlete has been doing before, and what has been eating before, and what was the status. And one of the things that whenever you do lactate testing, you have to ask the history of eating around 20, some might say 24 hours, for sure 12 hours before. So if someone comes fasted, everything will be low. What is more sensitive than low lactate levels is actually the maximum lactate level measured at the end of the day, at the end of the test. Now,
Yes. Yeah.
once again, if you have a person who is extremely well trained and who has typical curve based on the endurance stuff, it is very difficult to differentiate and to use it as a differentiator for eating disorder or not. Once again, example, if the athlete is doing a general preparation with no specific training, with no race pace, definitely there will be lower values. As soon as the athlete goes to the training, definitely the higher part of the curve goes higher. And there is another technical caveat, or not technical, but a biological caveat, which is measuring only one sample at the end, which is wrong. You need to measure a type of mother style for the VLA max. So you have to measure minute by minute until you reach the maximum lactate level, or maximum lactate value at the end of the day. So if you are really looking at the right part of the curve, you should not stop only at the end of the last step, but you need to measure constantly after the last step until you reach the maximum. So to the first decline, to the first decrease.
Okay, because I guess you might not be manifesting the highest value you will see on the last
Absolutely,
step,
yes.
right at the end of the
Absolutely.
effort.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, for example, for sprinters, I'm talking. If I say sprinters, I'm not talking pure sprinters, 100 meters, but let's say sprinters on the bicycle or cross country skiers. Definitely, those people can reach somewhere 11, 12 without any problem. But this is not their maximum lactate capacity. Definitely because the consumption is much lower than production, so they continue rising the lactate levels after the test until 16, 17. We have seen 18. And by the way, this is another step, because usually the devices are actually designed to measure around 2, 3, 6, and 7 max. As soon as you go over 7, 8, 9, 10, and even to double digit, the differences between each device is so huge that you really cannot compare, and there is no way you can compare device A and device B. There is a great table from the Norwegian Institute of Sport, that there is that table is actually showing the differentiation between those devices. But once again, this table is not new. It has been done a few years ago. And as what I was saying about the changes, the current changes in the designs, it's you have to be very cautious to measure the maximum lactate for this moment.
Okay, that's interesting. So two things I take away from this, because I actually do have a Lactate Scout 4. That is the device that I'm using. I remember we talked about this on Twitter a while ago about the, I guess the underestimation of BLA under 2 millimole in that device compared to its predecessors. So knowing that this is going to be low relative to what I might see on another device, and then like you said, the testing at the end that needs to be done every minute. And then getting back to my initial question, if we do that measurements, like you said, that max value on the test, is there values that you may deem extremely low for a type of athlete, like say an endurance athlete, or
it's individual.
It's individual enough that it falls within the bracket of variation, and you cannot draw any, say, conclusions off of that metric?
No, because one of the things that we all are trying to find a magic number. Someone is trying to find the VO2 max. Someone is trying to find the critical power or critical speed. Someone is trying maximum lactate steady state. Someone is trying maximum whatever it is, minimum or whatever curves. So everyone is just trying for whatever reason to find one magical number that can predict stuff. Unfortunately, we are all biological humans, and we are not there as easy as we think. So simply, as soon as you start, okay, I know it's bad to say, but in general population, for clinical studies or for sports studies, you definitely have to select one point as an outcome. And there, definitely, you have to select one, and that's up to the discussion of the research team or whatever your solution, what to do. But as soon as you are dealing with elite guys, you can't mislead them. It's completely unethical to mislead them with some one number or other number and compare those people or draw the outcome based on that specific number. They are not there. They don't perform based on the numbers. They perform based on their capacities, based on their capabilities, and based on the measures that we have. That's it. In many cases, many measures.
Yeah, I like that way of talking about this topic. That brings us into the next subject matter that we wanted to discuss was, like you said it really well, translating the science into practice, right? Because like you said, everybody's got their model, everybody's got their pony that they're riding. No, I'm more of a lactate person. No, I'm a critical power person. At the end of the day, we want to find the individual intensity distribution for that athlete so that we can optimize their training intensity distribution and then monitor if what we thought was going to happen at those intensities is actually happening, to make sure the training is eliciting the right adaptations. Is that a good summary?
Kind of, because what you just described the things that we know how to measure.
Yes.
It even comes to the very old philosophy of Plato. Okay, it's unreal seen and unseen real. Okay, so we see things and we try to interpret those things that we see, but how much we are sure that those are real. Okay, right. And in many cases we are not blind. Okay, we are just scratching the surface. This is what Dr. Brooks is using as when he's talking about lactate itself. We are just scratching the surface to understand where we are, and we are drawing strong recommendations and drawing strong advices based on, in many cases, very weak. I'm not saying weak measurement because it's well done for this moment by many years, but weak understanding of the complex biological system. That's number one. Number two, you just described of physiological values that are known. We are using, for example, even a PhysioFlow system, which is the French cardiac output. Okay, we see a thresholds on the cardiac output as well. Why nobody is talking about cardiac output stuff? Yeah, because people don't have the device. Okay, and I know I can't talk about it because I have seen it. Another point: why nobody is talking about stability of VO2 versus in the test as a VO2 steady state. Yes, of course, we know about the critical speed, and we know about domains that in severe domains the VO2 is slow component. Okay, perfect. It works really great in the studies. But I can give you immediately two examples of two elite athletes that one is, and both of them are on the world class level, and one is capable to maintain VO2 steady state for the definitely in severe over the boundary of heavy and severe. Definitely yes, she is having over that, but she is still capable to manage VO2 steady state for 10 minutes, nothing else. It's just the way of the adaptation of the athlete. So definitely, if you would probably say 20, 30 minutes, then she would definitely would be stopped, and we would see that. But for the 10 minutes, nothing happened. And another point is all kind of physiology, but what about the neuromuscular fatigue? Okay, how you measure neuromuscular fatigue, how you measure a stamina, how you measure the impact of the muscle skeletal system, rehab, physiotherapy, and then last but not least, one thing which we don't measure is the psychological stuff. Okay, coming back to Marcora stuff, about the psychological model, how we are talking about how we can measure and how we can assess the anticipation fatigue. Okay, someone believes, someone don't. All those things are just coming to you, and people are asking for the answer, and they hear that, and they add, and the study, and asking, okay, which study it is, and the answer is, okay, was the study done in the elite group and on your and homogeneous group on your sport, or yes or no? And if yes, then we can talk about it. Maybe good idea, good point is coming back to the lactate stuff. Are you aware of one single study that has been evaluating the lactate curves for women?
Not to my knowledge, but I'm also
No,
not the most well versed. It's not there.
I don't see anything.
Right.
Everything that has been validated has been done in men. That's it. We have
Right.
no idea whether that old stuff of Mother from 70s at 4 millimoles, and now we can talk whether this is correct, not correct, but it doesn't matter. We would stay here for ages, but nothing has been validated for women. Nothing. So how we can apply the stuff for women, for elite women? Non-elite is another story. So the thing is that you have great studies, you have great stuff coming from the universities, but when it comes to the working with elite people, you have to be absolutely individual. There is no way that the class effect can work.
It's very interesting what you're talking about here. What comes to mind, I guess, is almost, and I'd love to have your opinion on that. I guess shifting the focus towards the monitoring of training itself on a day-to-day basis, weekly basis, to make sure we're hitting the landmarks that we're after, rather than just kind of betting all in on a test and then doing everything based on that test, regardless of what's going on in training. So again, just maybe if we look at what Alexander Boo's doing with the the triathletes, when they're doing threshold stuff, they're looking at lactate because they know how it's going to react. If we think back to Niels van der Poel's training, obviously he had the same training 5 days a week, so that helps to have some consistency in the metrics. But then you can really tell: am I where I need to be? Am I underfed? Am I fatigued? Do I need to adjust? And based on that, you can do micro adjustments to the plan, and that might be more advantageous than the one test and then everything is based on that.
Absolutely, because one test doesn't help you at all. I mean, I like someone said that that consistency is more important than perfection in the elite sport, and this is what it is. You know, the level of limited understanding is huge. The problem is that everyone wants to have some area of like security or that, okay, how sure we are, how sure. No, we are not. This is the area that you are a human, you are a biological species. We have absolutely limited understanding, and you need to understand we help you as much as we can, but trust us, we are doing all the best what the knowledge at this moment is. And by the way, you finish your professional career in XYZ years, and the next generation, most likely, we tell them we need to do it differently because the understanding will be moved forward. That's it, how it is, and this is reality. And yes, what I believe that each coach needs to find their own way, and this is our task as physicians, and this is something as a historical stuff in Czech Republic. This is coming also to Germany or German speaking area here. The sports physiology, the exercise physiology is actually in many cases not existing as per se as education, but sports physicians are part of the work of the sports physician is exercise physiology. It brings a lot of value for us. So I do stuff as an exercise physiologist as well. Even there is no formal education for that because exercise physiology does not exist. But why I'm saying that you can advise them, you can correct them based on your knowledge. Your task is to correct the mistakes, but let them work and educate them. And as soon as they are guys who are mad about technological stuff, okay, you can think what it is about. And there are guys who are totally practical and they work only with RPE and they have good results. So your task is not to comment whether this is correct or not. Your task is to offer them which is okay or not, and which is not okay or not, which is like, okay, the current understanding is this and that, and he or she has to decide.
Yeah, that's such a great point. What comes to mind is George Box's quote, "All models are wrong, but some are useful." Yeah. And then Kira Wenham-Flatt always says, whoever has the best model of reality wins. As in, if you can approximate the best as to what is actually happening, whether it's lactate, whether it's critical power, or whether it's RPE, like you said, it doesn't matter. As long as you're close to the truth or the closest to the truth, you have the most chance, and everything goes well, obviously, in the whole, preparatory cycles and training and environment, you have the most chances of getting the best performance out of your athletes.
Yeah, definitely.
In that case, it's funny, I just ordered, I should receive it tomorrow, The Science of Winning? Is it Albrecht's book? Yeah. So I'm looking forward to diving into that, and I've been reading a few of the...
Read it.
Yeah, I look forward to. I should have it tomorrow. Regarding the modeling of human physiology using lactate, do you see value in that model over other models, in its practicality, in its accuracy? I guess maybe the accuracy comes down to how the coach can apply it with his athletes. But from your experience, what value is there in that model?
Yeah. So just to be clear for listeners, we are talking about Mader-Heck model coming from the Germany in the 70s and 80s. And the model compares the aerobic capacity and glycolytic capacity, or glycolytic power in this case, to define the balance between the lactate production and lactate elimination, which later we can call about anaerobic threshold. Now, there has been a lot of discussions about those models, and there's a lot of strong opinions. So I can just say my opinion about it, and I'm tired of, and I don't want to get to discussion, because they are more experienced people in that area, and skilled, and they are molecular biologists and exercise physiologists who studied. But I can comment it from the practical point, from using it to the athletes. First of all, the model has been developed based on the bike cycling.
Okay.
As soon as we try to move it and shift it into any other sport, we usually failed. Which means it is not that it's not working, it's not existing. It's just the way that how it was developed is based on the bike. Now, then he comes once again to hundreds of years back to the exercise physiology. Why the hell we do everything on a bike? Because it's easy. Right? So it's easy, it's measurement, a lot of movement noise is gone, running economy is gone, all those things can simply are excluded, and we are really having the most purest biology of human tissue. There are many caveats, but in principle, what I wanted to say is that the model itself, as a model in the brain and way of thinking, is actually has been proven to us in the reality as correct. But we have, for this moment, and contrary to many tries, we have not found the correct way of measuring the VLA max. Yes, there are people who say, yes, I can do it, and there are different models how to do it. We did not find anything that would be reliable and would be reproducible. We are just using it as a way of thinking and approaching, as a coexistence of the aerobic system and glycolytic system. And if there is high glycolytic, too high glycolytic, it's weak, it's vague. We don't have numbers once again.
Yeah.
Because many people's one thing, but I don't need numbers to understand what's going on about the athlete. You know what I mean? So as a philosophy, yes. As a model, as a mathematical model, yes. As a simple application to the testing of athlete, at this moment, I have to say no.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
because once again, this is very simple model. We are describing a complex case.
Yes.
Very complex case on the super simple model. Okay, it's not that simple, because when you go to the all calculations, that it's super sophisticated but stuff. But once again, pinpointing one thing, which is lactate.
Yeah, I got into an exchange of emails with a coach. His name is Andrea, I believe, and he might be in the Czech Republic if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not quite sure.
Andrea,
what's his last name? I forget. I was having a conversation with him on Twitter, and he essentially pulled just the lactate values that I had shared off of the different tests and trainings that I had done, and he built my model, and he built a predictive model of my performance on a given type of session. And I did the session, and I sent him the data, and fair enough, it was pinned like on the nose exactly what it was. It was like, oh, I did 4, and I could have done maybe a half more, and that's exactly what his model predicted, which I thought was fascinating and kind of opened me up to this side of things, and starting to think more about, okay, we have all those different models, the critical power, we have the lactate, we have now people trying to get to predictions with oxygen kinetics, like oxygen muscle saturation. Brett Kirby did some work on that, and I know Phil Skiba was part of the Breaking 2 project as well. All those things, I guess, just try to get to the same thing, right? We're all, but just from different perspectives with different tools, different assumptions, and different limitations as well. You were talking about, the more I move forward in all of this and my understanding, the more I see that understanding the limits of your model is probably more important than knowing your own model through and through.
Yes.
If you know where it's applicable, it's like somebody that isn't aware, the intrinsic limitation of a critical power model, for example, is that it doesn't predict anything underneath critical power. You can't say what's going on at 90% of critical power. That's not the point of the model. It's got a window of applicability, and you have to respect it. And then your model works quite well. It holds up. But as soon as you go out of the applicability field, then that falls, and you can't rely on it anymore. So you have to really understand what are the strengths and the weaknesses of whatever model you want to work with.
Definitely, because one of the things why all those model has been developed, usually those are not for steady state, but let's say call it a very simple kind of movement. Okay, so but as soon as you have a cross country skiing, it just, I mean, how you can apply those things to the practice, because talk to Holmberg. I mean, the way how they try to measure the anaerobic capacity. They tried 2 to 3 things, and each of them was giving different numbers. Change the style of skiing, and you have completely changed stuff. Then you go to the because we work with water sports. So of course, you can do some stuff on the kayaking, flat water kayaking. You can do some stuff on the rowing, but as soon as you get to the water slalom, I mean, you are lost, because one thing that the Twitter area and also those podcast stuff is usually based on the cycling, triathlon, running stuff, maybe some gym stuff. But when we are talking about Olympic sports, and trust me, I mean, our responsibility is for winter sports, cross-country skiing, the speed skating, and then we have figure skating. Whoa, oh my hell, how to help the conditioning coach of the Czech national team for the figure skating, help them to improve their performance. How you can measure the performance? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then all those models are just completely going to fail.
Yeah.
Because this is completely different kind of sport, and our famous ice hockey I'm talking, so, and then you go, those things are just so difficult. As soon as you switch from one sport or one discipline, going to 2 to 3 other disciplines, another shot put. Okay, we are taking care of shot put in the track and field. Yeah, one thing is that Tomáš Staněk, who just won the bronze medal. I mean, that guy is huge. I mean, huge, and his VO2 max is huge. I mean, unbelievably huge for the shot putter. One of the things is that how much there has to be VO2 max? How much value is on a VO2 max for a shot putter? And that's a big discussion. Someone say nothing, not really. And my argument is, forget it, because that guy needs a hell of recovery stuff.
Right.
So
it's not necessarily about the transfer of the value itself and the performance of the sport, but it's a general quality that allows you to tolerate immense amounts of volume in training for your sport.
Yes, absolutely. And then, for example, for those figure skating stuff, one way to assess is to use Veronique Bilat stuff as decreased load and sustainability of VO2 max. Okay, you can argue how applicable it is, how scientifically based it is, but what we see, this is one of the things that they are some of those that are they have a low conditioning preparation. They are unsustainable to keep that VO2 max during the test. So those are the things that are completely uncovered for this moment. and we all need to be very cautious on the application, and then just this exclusion or inclusion those things into the training process.
I guess it goes for any models. I was talking to
Yeah.
kinesiotherapist this morning, or I guess she's in training right now, but she's explored a lot of different models, PRI, the posturology stuff in France, and looking at tension over position or position over tension when it comes to reestablishing certain patterns within the body. And what she was saying is that you can't just say this model is right, this model is wrong. You have to see what the person in front of you needs, what their intrinsic profile is. If you have a CrossFitter come in, maybe adding more tension to the system isn't the answer. And if you have someone who doesn't know how to generate tension, maybe that's the way to get them to move forward. So you
Exactly.
have to fit, or you have to pick the right model for the case that you're actually working with. Like you said, it's all about being individual.
Definitely. And if you ask physiotherapists, how do they measure their outcome? I mean, how do you measure? I mean, they don't. Okay, they just feel it. The good physiotherapist feel it in the hand, and you just posture. You see him, you let him move, and he see or don't. I mean, this is so soft. I mean, we are talking about numbers and stuff, whatever, who has the best VO2 max, whatever. And then you have a physiotherapist who sometimes bring much higher value than all the exercise physiologists, just correcting the posture and improvement and by improving the economy of movement. That's it, nothing else. So, and this is something that is completely forgotten in many cases.
Yeah, and like you said, going back to a point that you made earlier in the podcast, we like to rely on things that seem tangible and measurable
Yes.
and that we can control because it gives us a kind of an illusion of safety, maybe
Yes.
that we have something to hang on to. Because, like you said, we are as an organism, we are an infinitely complex system that we're nowhere near to understanding, and I guess wrestling with this day in and day out can be a little bit tiring.
Yes, yes. And once again, and the problem of those things that as you cannot measure it, you cannot have any outcome. So you can really do a scientific study on that reality, because what's the hypothesis, how you test the hypothesis, it's very difficult. So the whole academia world is actually moved, to those hard numbers, something that is tangible, measurable, and reproducible. Okay, I'm not talking anything against academia. It's great, but in many cases, this is what is described is absolutely not applicable into the elite sport.
One
In
at a
many
time.
cases, yes, don't get me wrong, they are huge, good, great stuff, but the blind application,
Yes.
it's a dead road.
We cannot blindly apply models that were maybe elaborated in a certain setting to any setting that we want to because we want to.
Yes.
We wanted to talk about COVID and I guess post-COVID syndrome. I guess I just did a retest and I had COVID in July, although I never tested positive. I tried, but all the tests were negative. But swallowing razor blades for a week, fatigue, coughing stuff up for about a month, and I did a lactate test just a few days ago, and my values are way up compared to where they were just 4 months ago. Pretty significant stuff, and I definitely start to feel better now. But it's been 5 weeks, but I can tell that it's not going to go away that fast. And you were talking about the need for maybe a more holistic approach to recovery for athletes that have suffered from COVID. So how do you want to approach that?
Okay, so first of all, I saw your numbers. I'm not surprised at all. I would be actually surprised if they would be normal. This is something that we see on a regular basis. Okay, so people, we even know the reason for that. One of the COVID, one of the things is that coronavirus attacks the first complex of the OXPHOS system, which simply decreases the aerobic power and aerobic capacity.
Okay.
So what we saw in many cases, and I know from my colleagues from the other countries the same. The first thing that is decreased is the aerobic base. Almost everyone loses the aerobic base. And this is based on the deficiency on OXPHOS 1.
Okay.
oxos complex 1.
Yeah.
And this is described. It's not something that is not known. The second level is actually decreased even VO2 max.
Mm.
We have seen an elite Olympians with VO2 max 45 after the COVID, after 1 month of COVID,
Yeah.
1 month after the COVID.
Yeah.
This is dramatic. But for example, yesterday we have a world tour cyclist here after 2 weeks after COVID, and his VO2 max was 60, low 60s. Okay, so definitely not something that would qualify you to get to the world tour. So why I'm saying that, and he just he did, by the way, and this is still not the typical post-COVID stuff, because if you say post-COVID stuff or post-virus, post-infectious post-infectious syndrome, we are talking about definition is 1 month after the infection,
Okay.
which are the symptoms still persist.
Right.
So definitely there is a definitely significant hit into the oxidative system. Then there are big questions about fact of the glycolytic system. It is still speculated for this moment, but it looks like that the affection of glycolytic system is more about the detraining than the virus itself. And there are tons of other stuff we can talk about, but this is once again, when we talk about something measurable, this is something tangible, measurable, and clear. Now, when an athlete comes to you and say, "Hey, I'm underperforming. I got COVID." You test them, and then you realize this is the answer. What really strikes me at this moment is that we know how to describe it. You can go to the internet, you can go to Twitter, you can go all kind of studies, and this is well described. The question is, what the hell we should do with that? Because this is what the athlete is looking. Okay, he is not interested. Yeah, this is Oxford 1 issue. Okay, what the hell is Oxford 1? I have never heard about it, and I don't really care. It's great, doctor, but could you please do something with that? And then the problem is, as soon as you start really going into the depth, okay, what can be done? And then we are, for this moment, it's a very weak and thin ice. Except of the fact, okay, do the old stuff really take recovery stuff, start slowing, good eat, good health, good food, whatever, blah blah blah, and this is nothing. So in many cases they are trying, and this is their work. We are forgetting in many cases, if they don't come back, they lose their work, they lose their life, and this is a social issue, huge as well for them. So we are left for this moment in the area of evidence-based medicine, almost nothing. If I would have an amateur athlete, I would definitely stick with that, what I just said. But as soon as I have a professional, I have to be a little bit of more creative. I have to be more forward thinking. And what I would need to be is to go to the edge of, because in many cases, we have good cases of the immunomodulation. It is off-label use. We know it's off-label use. But even in some cases, corticoids. I mean, corticoids, who the hell would do corticoids for the athlete? Because that person from the general staff is healthy. Yes, he is having or she is having some stuff that he cannot or she cannot extreme work. But for the general population, that person is okay. Why the hell would you be giving him a corticoids? Not even mentioning that this is not approved for the treatment of post-COVID syndrome, right? But in many cases, and we have seen it, it worked. I'm not saying for everyone. So what we as doctors are left in is that we are really touching the really, it's a hot area, and many people can have a different opinions. Someone is more conservative, someone is more aggressive. I believe we are somewhere in the middle. If needed, we are open to use drugs and medication which are on off-label used under regime that the athlete is well informed, because we are doing it for the good of the athlete.
Right, and it's a controlled
carefully
environment. You take
Yes,
measurements, you make sure that everything
yes,
is
absolutely. Those things are done. I mean, medically, professionally, it's done. It's just the way how you approach and the way how you actually leave the person in the space, not actually helping him or helping her, and trying to be more aggressive and helping her or helping him with more aggressive approach. And I have no simple answer. It has to be individual. There's one
again.
thing I probably should mention to all the listeners. Everything what I was saying is that, of course, is doping free. Okay, so that's another stuff. We have filled one TUE in this summer, in this winter, approved TUE for one specific athlete for a very strong post-COVID syndrome, and it has been approved. But all the rest is definitely regular medical stuff, and definitely not something which is not approved.
I want to come back to this because I think it's important that we talk about it. Like you said, there's a general lack of direction as to what to do. So I want to come back to this. One thing that came to me when you were talking about the Oxfos, the complex 1 that is affected by COVID. Would that explain? Is there a direct link between lactate reuptake and pyruvate oxidation and that complex 1? And the reason I ask this is because my lactate values are much higher than what I'm used to see, and that 300 watt step did not feel like 17.5 millimole. I mean,
Yeah.
I know what 15.5 feels like at 325, and it really hurts. And that was nowhere near as bad. And I was surprised at how high those values were for the level of. I was at a 9 RPE, and my legs were hurting, but I was controlled in my breathing. Like I wasn't dying, and that was really high. Is there any link there? As in,
Yes.
it's higher because I'm not able to reuptake as much as I used to be?
Yes, because one thing that you have a limited, you have limited, you limited lactate oxidation.
Right. Yeah.
So as soon as it's there are patients with mitochondrial disease who has very similar, much worse, but who has similar effect of the Oxford system. We have one fighter that is having deficit in first and the third oxidation chain on the Oxfos, and definitely her. And when she got the COVID, her numbers were just completely off. And she already had that disease before. And definitely lactate curves, what you're describing is definitely just proving that, because there is a limited lactate oxidation.
All right. So
Especially it's difficult to prove it based on the high numbers on the 15, 17, but definitely this is something that is linked to the low lactate values.
okay. So going back to, I guess, what practical conclusions can we take from this, or what can we do? You said, just go easy and take your time. It doesn't cut it for the elite athlete. So in your estimation and with your experience so far, what is the right approach for a return to, training volume, training intensity for athletes that have suffered from COVID?
Yeah. So we have written the guidelines for elite athletes for the Czech Olympic committees. There is a staged approach, but there are other guidelines in different countries and different governing bodies. But simply, what is common for each of them, it has to be staged, and only if you pass the test or whatever an appropriate end of that stage, you can move to the next stage. And simply, yes, if you exclude all the medication, all the other stuff, definitely you need start with slow. And one of the things how you can measure it is very simple. It's a heart rate it's a heart rate versus power. It's a heart rate versus tempo. As soon as and of course, once again, if you have those numbers from pre-COVID, perfect. In many cases, you don't. So then you are once again left with RPE and your feeling versus tempo, because they are still at least not using heart rate monitoring at all. So RPE versus tempo, and then you have to be patient. As soon as you start with zone one, whatever, so beginning recovery zone, then you can get to the zone two, three, and so forth. But one thing you should not forget is actually the strength training, because one of the things which is forgotten on that long slow distance and the recovery training is actually the loss of the glycolytic system and loss of strength. When we have the very nice numbers of from some deconditioning studies, but also from the real stuff, the first thing that is wiped out is actually maximum speed, maximum power, which is gone after 1 or 2 weeks completely. So one thing people usually forget those I don't want to say polarized, but super polarized. So strength and then recovery stuff, and then actually as it goes better and better, move it more to the more to the
To the middle.
to the middle, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is what everyone can do.
Mm.
There has been a speculation. We don't know for this moment, because there have been speculation about some nutritional interventions, whether it works or not. For this moment, we did not find anything. There has been rumors around some drugs like idebenone and some others, but nobody has been proving it. For this moment, those are the stuff about and then there are in cases what we have seen, as I said, some immunomodulation stuff, because the COVID itself is the stuff of the post-COVID is the overreaction of the immune system. This is what it is. So as soon as you are able to modify and manipulate the immune system back to the normal, then you are simply back. So omega-6 is usually used, vitamin D is used, and then when it goes to the prescription medicine, some immunomodulation stuff, and as I said, in some extreme cases, corticoids.
Yeah, to give an illustration of the changes in heart rate to power, I usually rode my easy zone 2 around 140 watts, and I was always around 110 heart rate. And now if I'm at 120 watts, I'm at 120 heart rate. So I've gone down 20 watts and up 10 beats. And so I should just ride this out until the heart rate goes down, and then I can just climb up slowly back the
Yeah.
intensity ladder.
Unfortunately, this is what you can do. That there is not too much about that. Yes.
Right. I'll just keep doing my morning rides and my strength training then.
And don't forget the strength training. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Jiri, that was a great conversation. I learned a lot, and again, I appreciate you coming on and sharing everything that you know. We've had some good exchanges on Twitter in the past, and you're quite open to sharing and giving your opinion. Where can people find you online if they'd like to exchange with you or learn more about how you work?
I'm on Twitter. I gave up complete. I'm still on the Facebook, but I gave up posting there anything. Instagram, yeah, forget it. And then maybe if someone want to call me, it's Dostal at centrumsportmed.cz. But the best thing is to get me on a Twitter.
All right. Well, your Twitter link is in the description of the podcast. So for those who want to check that out, they're free to do so. Jiri, thanks again for coming on the show. That was a lot of fun.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye. And thank you
Bye.
for the invitation.
It was a pleasure. Take care. To this episode, if you would like to support the podcast, please take a few moments to leave a written review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. If you want to watch this episode again, you can find the full video recording on my YouTube channel. You'll also find hundreds of hours of free content, all my podcasts, my thoughts of the day, structured presentations, and more. So don't wait, go subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.